All right, let's get into it. This is hands down one of the wildest business stories of our time. It's about a company that honestly should have failed. The founders were completely broke. The whole idea was kind of sketchy and illegal in a lot of places, and, even they didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And yet, it became a global giant. This is the unbelievable story of Airbnb.
So, just for a second, I want you to wrap your head around this massive paradox. Picture the biggest, most powerful company in the entire hotel and travel industry. A company with more places to stay than all the top hotel chains combined.
Now, what if I told you that company doesn't own a single building? Not one hotel, not one apartment, not even a single room. It's a business model that, when you look at it on paper, seems completely nuts.
But you want to know the craziest part of all? This multi-billion-dollar empire wasn't cooked up in some fancy boardroom with a bunch of venture capitalists. Nope. It all started because of a really simple, really desperate problem. Two guys in San Francisco were about to get kicked out of their apartment.
This is where it all began. It's 2007. The founders, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, they knew this huge design conference was rolling into town and every single hotel was booked solid. Now, they didn't have a spare room, but Joe had 3 airbeds stashed in a closet. So they threw together a super basic website, called it Airbed and Breakfast. The goal here wasn't to change the world. It was a last-ditch effort just to scrape together enough cash to make rent. That's it.
And this quote right here, it tells you everything you need to know about where their heads were at. They saw this as a tiny, one-time thing, a quick way to make a buck that would buy them a little time to come up with their actual million-dollar idea. They had no clue they were already sitting right on top of it. So after that first little taste of success, they thought, okay, let's give this a real shot. But reality? It hit them like a ton of bricks. They launched at the massive South by Southwest festival and got a grand total of 2 bookings. And one of them was from Brian himself.
Oof.
Investors basically laughed them out of every meeting, and pretty soon they were drowning in credit card debt just trying to keep the lights on. They actually called this time the Trough of Sorrows.
And the rejections, they were just brutal. There's this one famous story where they're pitching an investor at a coffee shop. Halfway through their presentation, the guy just stands up, doesn't say a word, leaves his half-finished drink on the table, and just walks out. Never came back. See, nobody believed that normal people would ever agree to sleep in a stranger's house.
So, they're completely broke, totally out of options, and they need cash to survive. Their solution was, well, it was weird. It's the 2008 presidential election, so they decide to pivot to breakfast cereal. I'm not kidding. They designed and hand-folded hundreds of boxes of Obama O's and Captain McCain's, filled them with cheap Cheerios, and sold them as political collector's items.
And believe it or not, it actually worked. They sold these boxes for $40 a pop and made about $30,000. Now that was just enough to pay off their crushing credit card debt. But way more importantly, it proved they were scrappy. It proved they would do anything to survive.
And that cereal story, it became their golden ticket. They were about to get rejected from the famous startup incubator, Y Combinator, when Joe, on a whim, pulls out a box of the cereal. The guy interviewing them, Paul Graham, was so blown away by their sheer hustle that he let them in. He famously told them, "You guys are like cockroaches, you just won't die." And that was the moment everything started to change.
At Y Combinator, they got 3 pieces of advice that went against everything you'd expect. First, aim for ramen profitability. Just make enough money to survive on ramen noodles. Second, forget getting 1 million users. Get 100 users who absolutely love you. And third, and this was the most important one, do things that don't scale.
So they took that advice to heart. Paul Graham told them, stop coding, go meet your users. So they flew to New York, where they had the most listings. And the second they started talking to their hosts, they saw the problem. It was staring them right in the face. The pictures of the apartments were awful. I mean, dark, blurry, taken on a flip phone in 2008, awful. Nobody wanted to book a place that looked like that. So what did they do? Instead of building some fancy, scalable photo upload tool, they did the exact opposite. Brian and Joe flew to New York, rented a really nice camera, and literally went door to door taking professional photos of their hosts' apartments by themselves, for free. I mean, you can't get any more unscalable than that. In that one, completely unscalable action changed the entire trajectory of the company. Bookings for the places with good photos just exploded. Suddenly, there was a standard of quality that all new hosts tried to match. Look at this. It took them 4 really long years to get their first 4 million guests. But in 2013 alone, they added another 7 million. That's the legendary hockey stick growth curve everyone in Silicon Valley dreams of. But all that explosive growth came with a very, very dark side. In 2011, a host named EJ came home to find her apartment had been completely and utterly destroyed. And this quote, it doesn't even begin to cover it. The guest had stolen heirlooms, burned her belongings, and just trashed the place. The story went viral, and suddenly Airbnb was facing its first huge public disaster.
At first, the company completely botched its response. They put out these cold, generic legal statements and people were furious. But then, Brian Chesky did something brave. He ignored his lawyers, wrote this raw, really heartfelt public apology and took full responsibility. And he backed it up with action, launching a host guarantee to cover damages and a 24/7 support line. This was the moment the scrappy little startup was forced to grow up and fast.
But just as Airbnb started to figure out its internal trust issues, a whole new enemy popped up: city governments. See, their model created these massive new problems. In places like New York, the powerful hotel industry fought them tooth and nail. In cities like Berlin, they were accused of jacking up housing costs for locals. And this kicked off a long, expensive, and brutal series of legal fights all over the world that are still going on today.
And then, the apocalypse. In early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic brought global travel to a dead stop. I mean, you literally could not invent a worse crisis for a company built on people traveling and staying in strangers' homes. Bookings dropped off a cliff, people requested over $1 billion in cancellations, and for a minute there, it really looked like the company might not survive.
But, just like in the cereal box days, they proved they were cockroaches. They pivoted hard. The company shifted its entire focus away from fancy international trips and started promoting local getaways. They encouraged people who were going stir-crazy in their own homes to just rent a place nearby for a weekend. It was a genius move, and it saved the entire business.
So after surviving angry investors, near bankruptcy, public disasters, citywide legal battles, and a literal global pandemic, you'd think they'd be rolling in cash, right? Well, here's the final incredible twist. For the first 12 years it was in business, Airbnb never once reported a single year of profit. Not one.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. This is a company that has proven time and time again that it can survive pretty much any threat the world throws at it. But the real paradox of Airbnb is that its biggest fight might just be with itself. Can a business model that's built on constant, explosive growth ever actually become consistently profitable? Or is its very nature to just disrupt everything, including itself, forever? That's the billion-dollar question that still hasn't been answered.